The earthquake in Japan has had a profound effect on the Japanese auto industry, and most plants remain closed there. While Mitsubishi and Nissan have reopened some plants, Toyota has said it will remain closed through at least Tuesday next week. Many U.S. automakers and parts as well come from Japan, and now those parts are being delayed, as you would expect. Just yesterday, General Motors said it would temporarily shut a truck plant here in Louisiana for that reason. For Insight, we are joined by Maryann Keller, the president of the consulting firm Maryann Keller Associates. Her clients include major domestic and foreign automakers. Also bringing us the consumer perspective is Karl Bauer, senior analyst for Edmunds.com. For more than a decade, he served as editor for Edmunds, and he now covers design, manufacturing, and marketing as well. Thanks so much, both of you, for joining us. Maryann, let me start with you and ask you how serious these supply chain concerns are. I mean, we've been talking about them in the tech industry, but we haven't heard that much about them as far as production of automobiles. I mean, are we going to see fewer cars on the lot?
Where dealers are already running short of certain models, and it's hard to think that the problems in Japan are not ultimately going to have an impact on production, whether it's having to slow production or even cease production of certain vehicles. And in the case of the pickup trucks for GM, we're talking about a major part. We're talking about transmissions. But an automobile has 5,000 parts in it, and it has to be produced with every single one of them. And many of those parts are coming from Japan. And so you can't, you know, it's going to flow, I think, across the industry as a whole.
Certainly sounds very serious. Karl, let's get you to weigh in. What do you see as the impact on both the Japanese automakers and the U.S. automakers?
Well, I think the main point now is how dynamic the situation is. You know, we've got the automakers planning to start up next week. We're not sure about the suppliers. And as Maryann said, that's a key part. The automakers can't produce a car if a part's missing. And I don't think we know really the impact yet. So that's really probably the main point here, is that if this was all handled and most of it was back up and running in the next week or 2 weeks, it would probably have a minimal impact because of the inventory that's already at various dealer lots. If it drags on longer than that, it could be worse.
I think it's going to be worse because you have infrastructure problems into the north of Japan where roads have been destroyed. Some of the ports are not usable. And so often the problem, and even though companies are saying they're going to get back up into production, they're going to produce what they can based upon the inventories at hand. Often a parts company or an auto company would say its assembly plants were not damaged, and that's the case for most of the Japanese auto industry. But that might not be the case for the Tier 2 or Tier 3 supplier that is feeding into the larger company. And I think that's really what's going on right now. They're trying to assess just how big and broad and widespread this problem is. So while I don't want to sound alarmist and don't want to suggest that we're going to stop producing vehicles, I think that the problems are not going to be solved and the auto industry goes back to full production in Japan, both cars and parts, in a few days. This is going to take a few weeks to resolve. Fortunately, Japan is an industrialized country where they're working very hard, I think, to resolve the infrastructure issues. The power plant is a separate issue, and that also has consequences to how fast they can ramp up.
Well, and as you point out, Maryann, I mean, even if they're making parts at factories there, even if they open up and continue making parts as quickly as they can, shipping them out is going to be an issue, at least at ports in basically half the country. And the other half of the ports, they're going to have bottleneck problems with shipping. Karl, let me ask you, from the consumer standpoint, what does this mean? Do we see higher prices? Do we see fewer deals? I mean, if we're all competing for the same, for a fewer number of cars, then I would guess that you don't see the discounts that you would expect.
Exactly, and we've got incentives that are in place from most of the manufacturers until the 31st of March, and it's unlikely that they would shift those before the end of the month. But what happens on April 1st is going to be very interesting because of this situation. And we do feel like there's already indications of people who know that cars are built in Japan, like the Prius or the Honda Fit, that people who are considering them might be that much quicker to go buy them. We actually might see an uptick in sales domestically in the immediate future because of that.
Folks, we do need to leave it there. Thank you so much. Maryann Keller and Karl Bauer talking about really the impact on the auto industry as a result of Japan.